Hello and welcome to SonicLAB. I'm Gaz Williams, and today we're looking at the new Novation Launchpads, the Launchpad X and the Launchpad Mini Mark III. So the Launchpads have been very successful for Novation. They've been around for about 10 years now and have developed in some ways and have pretty much stayed true to the original vision in others. The original vision being, of course, that they are clip launchers for Ableton Live first and foremost. That is what their raison d'etre is. They are specifically designed for that task. And if we look on the screen here, we've got an Ableton Live project, and I can go to either of these launchpads. They're both running. You can run multiple ones on the same computer. I can launch a scene. On the column we'll launch the scene, or I could pick and choose. The Launchpad Mini gains some stop, solo and mute functions from this bottom button here. So if I do stops, I can just run my finger along there, hit all the stops. You can do the same thing with the big one, uses a slightly different paradigm. When we go into the mixer button here, then this column here lights up and we've got secondary functions. These are volume, pan, send A, send B, stop clips, mute, solo and record arm. Now, record arm is a big part of the difference between the two actually, because the Launchpad X is a little bit more geared around creativity as well as just simply clip launching. When I hit this record button, it'll just go into record, but if I press and hold it, it will capture whatever MIDI things I've been doing. It doesn't work with audio, but if I've just been playing some music and decide, oh, I actually like that, you can press and hold it and it'll remember a certain amount of time. When I'm talking about the Mini though, it doesn't have that record button. It also doesn't have the facility to arm tracks from here either. You've got some custom modes here. One is set up to be keys, one is set up to be drums. So this is follows the layout of the drum grid in Ableton. And also there's a user one. I've set this one up here. I'll explain that in a moment. But these three modes, drums, keys and user, these are all definable. Now there's a similar process on the Launchpad X, in as much as if we go into custom, then we've got 4 different custom scenes here. So you set this up using the Novation components. When you plug either of these in to a computer, they'll appear on the desktop as if they're a USB mass storage device. There's no files on there, but there's just a shortcut. If we have a look here, I click on it and it takes you to the Novation components page. Kind of nifty. If you don't like that functionality, you can turn it off. But it's pretty cool. It's quite a good way to get you to that setup stage. Let's have a look. Now, the same process for both of the devices applies here, but we'll choose the big one to do it with. So I'm going to pick Launchpad X, and I'm going to go Create Custom Mode. And here we've got a blank version of the Launchpad X. Now, if we look in the widgets, we've got faders, we've got chromatic keyboard, we've got scale keyboard. We can choose what scale we want. A drum grid, MIDI notes, program change, CC buttons. So for instance, I could drag a drum grid on to the page somewhere, anywhere I like, in the middle if I want. And then if I select it, I could choose what color I want those pads to appear. I can choose what MIDI channel it's on. Let's say I could put them onto channel 10, for instance. Go back to the widgets. I could put a fader on here. Once I've got one vertical fader though, I can't put a side fader on it. It'll replace it. Unfortunately, there's no half-length faders. I'd like to see them. However, we could put a couple of faders, and this fader type is like a kind of cross fader. So I'll have to make sure they're on different MIDI channels. Let's put this on MIDI channel 6 and we'll make it purple. Let's go back to widgets. Oh yeah, we could put a chromatic keyboard at the top here. And then if I wanted to, I could put a bunch of program change buttons along here. Let's just drag a couple of program change buttons in. And then on the left, I could put some CC control change buttons here. So we've got program change and control change. And again, you can choose the colors. I could have like a green, and I'll say program. Let's say it takes us to program change number 4, and then another program change. Let's say number 27. And let's make it on the drum channel, which we said MIDI channel 10. You get the gist of it though. We can set up this custom page. Our CC is a little bit more complex. We can make the pad modes momentary, toggle or trigger, MIDI channel again, on value, off value. There doesn't seem to be a way of setting up the pressure though, but I guess there could be a lot more things added to this as it goes along. But really, it's super simple to set up. Now, I've set up this relatively complex MIDI patch, and now I go send to Launchpad X. I'll choose one of my 4 locations. Why there's not 8 locations, I don't know either, but let's go 3. Now, on my one here, custom, I'll go down to 3. And there it is, there's our layout. So that was pretty fast and pretty neat. And I can save that as well. And now that'll save in my own cloud account there, and I can get that anywhere I am. Same thing with this little one here. We can save 3 different pages on there, defaulting to drums and keys, and it does say drums and keys, but they don't have to be that when the user. And this user one I've created is a bunch of faders. This brings another big difference between these two, the little one and the big one, in that this little one not having velocity sensitivity means that faders, as I change the settings of my faders, like so, they change instantly. As soon as I touch it, it'll jump to the thing. However, if we come on this fella, volume, then it's got these velocity faders. And what is a velocity fader? Well, if I press the bottom slowly, it'll fade down. I say slowly. If I press it softly. If I press it hard, it'll jump instantaneously. But there's also, each setting has 4 levels. So if I was going up here, I can cycle through soft, medium, hard, hard. And the good news is that that works on the mini one too. It gives me 4 levels wherever it is. So you can think of that as a fine tune. You've got the crude 8 and then 4 within. So it gives you a little bit more granularity, if you will. Now, velocity sensitivity is a big part of the Launchpad X, and the pads feel a lot better. Now, here's the Launchpad Pro. This is still a current model. They now share a lot more in common. This, however, does have dedicated buttons as opposed to buttons doubling up. And crucially, along here are a bunch of buttons that are essential for the creative process, including like an undo. So if you've just done something and you don't like it, bang, hit undo, obviously, bam. Whereas with the Launchpad X, that functionality isn't on there. You still would have to be going to your computer keyboard. So if we go to notes, one of the things that's absolutely brilliant now with the Launchpad X is that it's gained the Launchpad Pro's notes mode, which in turn I think was inherited from the Novation circuit. And what happens in the notes mode is, like a long press on notes takes us there. We can choose what key we want our notes to be within, and we've got a keyboard here which we can just about make out. I'm just going through that. Would be C, D, E, F, G, and here is the sharps. Along here are a bunch of predefined scales, minor, major, etc. Along the bottom here is MIDI channels, but also we can choose the overlap, how those notes are laid out. But this is what's quite cool. So let's say, for instance, I'm in C minor. Let's come back here. So now we can see the lit up notes are the notes of C minor. So providing we play lit up notes, we'll always be in key. And nice though, you've got the notes in between, so you can play, you know, you can play chromatic runs and that sort of thing, but still know where to land. So I think that's pretty cool. But if you want to turn off out of scale notes, then let's go back into notes mode. And then this top button here toggles it. Once that's on, when we go back here, then you can see that we're just running from octave to octave. Now that layout thing I was saying about here, you see, we're just going up. If I go back into my notes mode, I can change the different overlaps and it changes the array. These pads do feel really nice. They have got quite a softer feel, and they're a little lower, I think, than on the Launchpad Pro. Maybe, but they certainly feel nicer to play a more legato approach. They're definitely more sensitive, so therefore they feel a little bit more musical. Now, I've created an interesting little setup here. If I load up a project in Ableton, we've got an instance of Omnisphere, which Omnisphere can be addressed by 8 different MIDI channels at the same time. So I thought, let's set that up. So I go into my custom mode here, and it's in custom 1. And here, what we've got are 8 minor keys. So I can play 8 instruments simultaneously. The build quality of these things are brilliant. You know, they're not going to break. I think they're virtually unbreakable. So you could certainly take them on the road with you. Very low profile, a little bit thinner actually than the Launchpad Pro. Actually, almost half as thick, really. So, you know, and this has got a fair bit more heft to it. This Launchpad X certainly feels a bit lighter. But something else that's quite cool and is worth mentioning is that Novation have decided to adopt the USB-C port. It does work up or down, so it's got certain functions. I mean, that's really going to come in handy when you're groping around in a dark DJ booth. Because the Launchpads are both class compliant, it means you can connect them to anything, so they don't have to be connected directly to Ableton Live. For instance, here I've got it connected to an iPad, just USB, straight to USB. This being an iPad Pro, I'm able to power it. If you are using a normal iPad or even an iPhone, then you need the big clag nut and maybe a power bank or something. You'll need that. It won't be able to run. But with the iPad Pro, it's pretty cool. You can connect it directly. But the best thing about it is, because the Launchpad is essentially a polyphonic aftertouch device, you can use it with something like Animoog. We can do stuff like this. Both units come bundled with Ableton Live Lite, which makes total sense, but also some decent other bits and bobs in there too. Haven't had a chance to check it out, but I reckon seeing some decent names in there means that there's going to be some little gems worth exploring. The prices of them, the big one, the Launchpad X, is £179. The Launchpad Mini is £99. The difference in price is certainly reflected by the playability and the more musical feature set of the Launchpad X. The Launchpad Mini, as I mentioned, is primarily geared around that Ableton Live launch workflow, which is its origins. After all, it is the Launchpad, with a little bit of that creativity, with the caveat that it doesn't respond to velocity or aftertouch. However, there is still 64 pads, so you still could do some quite interesting stuff with it. They get a definite thumbs up. They do exactly what they should do, and they do it very, very well. The additional functionality is certainly welcome, and I'm sure they'll do very well for Novation. I'm Gaz Williams. This has been SonicLAB. We'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.